This is David Cowen with Careers in the Business of Law. Today I have Omar Haroun, the founder of Eudia, and Alison Zoellner, the Group General Counsel of Dentsu Global, one of the largest advertising agencies in the world. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the 2027 edition of Careers in the Business of Law. I know a lot of people are thinking about what happened in 25 and what's going to happen in 26. The beauty of working with both of you that I know so well is that we could just skip right ahead into 2027 in terms of what's happening. So, Omar, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with you, if you can, just a little introduction for those who might not know who you are, and then we're going to jump into what the world looks like in 2027.
Yeah, sure. So founder and CEO of Eudia, we are building a data platform, knowledge platform, and we launched an AI native law firm. So what's a bit unique about our model is we don't believe that right now many people in the status quo have the right incentives to actually fundamentally transform how they operate. And so by building a vertically integrated technology with the humans, we've done 2 acquisitions now. We have 300 lawyers and an AI native law firm. We're actually able to fundamentally do the right thing for the customer, and we exclusively serve Fortune 500 companies as well as the U.S. government.
You and I are big fans of Mike Maples, and Mike wrote a terrific book called Pattern Breakers, in which one of my favorite comments in that book is, are you living in the future? Are you solving a problem that you actually have, and are you living in the future? So let's live in the future. It's 2027. One of the many comments that you've made, but the one that really sticks out that I like so much that I want to lean into is this. The law firm of the future will have more AI engineers than lawyers, or should have more AI engineers than lawyers. If we could deconstruct that a little bit, I think that gets us to 2027, because we're all thinking about how lawyers will work with AI and, the impact in augmented intelligence. And I do believe in augmented intelligence. I think that's where we are. That's human in the loop. But when you say the law firm of the future should have more AI engineers than lawyers, tell us a little bit about what you mean by that, if you would.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's 2 types of knowledge that's rare and knowledge that's commoditized. We believe that the commoditized knowledge is asymptotically approaching zero when we're building an augmented intelligence platform. That's really in the pursuit of making that happen. The more interesting question is, how do you actually develop and harness rare knowledge? And we think that that's actually mostly about downloading the brain of experts who actually have a lot of undocumented knowledge and combining AI engineers with not just any lawyer, but actually like some of the world's best lawyers to be able to really think about how to do that effectively. And when you think about what that really means and what's possible as a result of that, it's not just driving huge ROI by not having incentives to actually spend any time on tasks that you don't need to spend time on anymore. It's actually more about driving outcomes that weren't even possible before, but for the combination of the lawyer and the engineer, who are both working towards the shared goal of actually solving problems in a completely new way.
Alison, if you can, tell us a little bit about your background at Dentsu. Your background. One of the reasons that I like, your background so much is because it's such a business savvy GC background. From an associate mergers and acquisitions at Sullivan and Cromwell, VP and assistant general counsel at the New York Times for 17 years, Honeywell for 8 years in advanced materials, corporate finance. I mean, you've got a very business savvy GC background, and now global general counsel at Dentsu. Just tell us a little bit about that role, and then I want to hear your thoughts, if you would. And I think we'd all like to hear your thoughts on the law firm of the future should have more AI engineers than lawyers. What does that mean to you?
Sure. And I'm not sure they're different things in the future. I think the lines are going to get really blurry, which is going to be incredibly exciting. But Dentsu Group, as you noted, David, is one of the largest advertising and marketing companies in the world. But one of the things that makes it super interesting is that it's publicly listed and headquartered in Japan, which, sort of apropos of this conversation, is a place where AI has been in the conversation for a long time. And business innovation is a part of really every successful company in Japan's DNA. It's one of the most innovative societies in the world. And so that gives us a special luster, I think, to Dentsu in this moment. And we have a large legal team distributed across many, many, many countries. We're serving clients in 145 countries and have lawyers in many of those. And we are very fortunate because Dentsu and our industry is leaning so hard into AI and innovation as we serve our clients, who are the world's 100 largest advertisers, that legal not only has to keep up, but in fact, to actually deliver the right legal advice, we got to be ahead of the curve. So we're doing that. And obviously, we're big fans of people like Omar and tracking very closely what they're doing at Eudia and in the competitive set. But we have to deploy that and have our people with hands dirty, working with AI, deploying it, thinking about it, and challenging themselves as to how they do their work in order to serve our business and our clients effectively.
Help me, if you will, debunk what I'm hearing in the marketplace right now, which is I talk to a lot of people about Eudia, and they think it's a technology play. And I try to say this is not a technology play. It's technology powered, perhaps, but this is augmented intelligence. This is about people. This is about thinking differently. Can you share your experience about, and Eudia is not the only game in town. Like a lot of people are going to play the way Eudia does. They're just, I see them as first to the boats. I mean, I could be wrong, Omar. Maybe you're not first to the boats, but you've got a very Palantir, forward deployed engineer, not consulting kind of gig feel to you. Alison, can you share your experience with the people and how that fits into this adoption, adaption, and augmentation of technology?
Well, what I think is interesting is these, and Omar and his team do a very good job of explaining this, is a lot of those silos. So you're thinking of your tech stack and legal and compliance, and then you have these silos between the CLM, and then you have your AI, and then you might have something else that is a repository like OneTrust, these different things. And then again, and we're just learning and synthesizing how all these pieces fit together. But I think Omar and his team do a good job of challenging that silo and those layers and saying, no, this should be one big thing where all that delivery is coming together cohesively, which is great because the one thing we are completely unable to do, I think, all of us, is stitch together technology that doesn't want to play together. That is really beyond the realm for what we're already having to do. But I mean, Omar, you can articulate this in a far more articulate way, but that's what really grabbed us about our time together, is throw out all those preconceptions and those defined terms. And we even challenge legal tech and say, forget that. You're not siloed off in legal. This is something serving the company, driving the top line and the bottom line.
Yeah, I think that's I think when I meet people like Alison, who are frankly more business people than lawyers, I mean, obviously, as a chief legal officer, general counsel, you have to know how to navigate legal issues for the company, and ultimately that is a core part of the job. But I think one of the biggest differences between meeting really business savvy general counsels and thinking about lawyers at law firms or in other settings is your job is not actually to minimize risk. It's to basically manage risk and optimize it to be able to actually help the business grow. And I think that's such a subtle but important difference that when you look at that as the fundamental objective, it actually means, like, I was just talking to one of Alison's peers who had a pretty provocative comment, but he said that he thinks that redlining is actually a crutch for people who don't know how to do deals, which is not something you'd ever hear at a law firm, right? I mean, the whole point of hiring a law firm is to basically mark up the document with all the risks, and then typically in-house you take it back, and both the business and legal people internally decide, okay, which of these can we live with or do we have to push back on? And so I think if you can actually start thinking about cutting out these entire middle layer systems, right? Middleware in the case of software, like all the legal tech stack of the past, I would say like middle management people, internal and external, and really think about the opportunity as if we fundamentally now have the opportunity to take all this data, which does live in multiple silos and in people's heads, and actually think about how do I actually build this brain that actually manifests the risk profile that I'm comfortable with and no longer make speed and risk a trade-off, but something that you can actually almost in real time tap into the greatest minds like Alison and have that be what drives decision making. I think that's a very, very compelling vision, and one that we're starting to see is very, very possible with this model of, again, pulling together some combination of forward deployed engineers and lawyers that have their own incentives.
Can you explain to the audience what a forward deployed engineer is?
Yeah, so Palantir coined that term, and it was a very militaristic term because a lot of Palantir's original business was obviously with the US government. But I think the concept was very, very powerful, which is that because frankly, a lot of companies like mine that are venture backed historically, if you're a SaaS company, because software companies have such great margins, uh, there's been a lot of pressure to never go into services or anything that remotely looks like consulting or doing things that aren't as scalable, right? And so Palantir is one of the first trailblazing technology companies, and up until recently, people doubted if they even were a technology company in Silicon Valley, but now they're 80% plus gross margin proves that they actually have been successful in becoming a technology company. But the model was, let's actually do what's best for the customer and actually bring engineers to the customer. We have a platform, but let's actually not settle for giving that technology to the customer and hoping that they can figure it out, but actually providing the ability and support to connect to their internal systems, be able to on the fly build things that actually make it work in that environment. And so I think now we're seeing this big wave with a lot of AI companies following suit. To your point, David, we've been doing this from day one, and we don't we call them augmented engineers, not forward deployed engineers, but frankly, the concept is very, very similar.
It seems to me that, that what separates you and those that are about to follow you are you're first to the boats that you get how the tech works. You're 12 or 18 to 24 months ahead of how the tech works. And the tech works so well that you can walk into, the GC's office and say, let me show you what we can do for you. They could never do that. They won't be able to hire the talent. This is about a demand and flow of talent. First to the boats. I mean, I'm getting into, Clayton Christensen and Mike Maples and who else do you want to put in there? That maybe you can also put the first to 10,000 hours with Malcolm Gladwell. Like if you've read that, that's kind of a foundational. Like who's got the first to 10,000 hours? And there's something about what you're doing, Omar, along with others, right? It's just accelerating that pathway. You're accelerating the pathway to 10,000 hours. Like 10,000 hours actually used to take 10,000 hours. Like if you were first year associate, like there was no shortage. Like you could get 10,000 hours in 3 years, 4 years, or 5. But if you wanted to make partner, you had to do it in 3 years. Now you can do it in less than that with the right partner. Am, am I catching this right? I'll ask Omar first and then Alison, your thoughts on what your law department looks like in 2027.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally we have $6 trillion of human labor in the professional services industry, which has been basically implicitly and explicitly trained to think that the best model is to package judgment into time and then on some level charge on a time and materials basis if you're an external firm, or internally request overtime, think about your value as I work so hard, look how many hours I spent working for the company, that's why I should get a bonus. And I think that entire notion is completely going out the door, and we now need to think about outcomes, outputs, and frankly, people could probably work much less to achieve the same thing, or they now have an opportunity to achieve something that was impossible before. So I think that is kind of the change that's happening, and that, to your point about living in the future, it just seems so obvious that 2 years from now, even 1 year from now, I'd argue that's going to become much more well appreciated or well known. I think right now we're still in this messy middle phase where people haven't quite caught up to that, and that's at the heart of a lot of these discussions.
I love that you went to time. That you went to time and billing and outcome. I want an outcome. I really don't care how you get there, right? When I buy a car, I don't know how many designers there were. I don't know how many clay models there were. I don't know how many wind tunnels there were. I don't know how many times the car crashed on the track as you made it perfectly safe for me. I want a car that goes from 0 to 60 in X, and I'll pay Y. Allison, I would think you want the same thing as the general counsel. Like,
Well, I think you're touching on something really important. I need a car that is safe. And I think this is the unique role that legal is going to play with all these enablers, which I'm so excited about. And I think they're going to make our job way more fun and attract the best minds to this discipline in a very different way than they have before. But I think the sort of sacred duty that we're going to have in the general counsel's office and with legal and compliance is ingesting all this stuff, making it fit together properly with the help of people like Omar. But then at the end of the day, the buck stops with us to make sure that we're observing the right ethical integrity, compliance, et cetera, standards in the same way that we have to do with the other parts of our business to be that challenge. To say, yeah, this is fantastic ROI, this is great, but think about the broader implications. And that is, I think, the preserve still of legal and compliance that our board and our shareholders are relying on us to bring those kinds of issues to the fore.
You know, Omar, I think I might have the beginning of a new advertising slogan, an advertising campaign for you. Eudia, the Volvo of legal services.
I like it.
Safety first. We're looking for seatbelts and airbags and safety. And what if augmented intelligence is safer than the billable hour and time and materials?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, sort of ignoring the specifics of whatever your views on Elon Musk are, I think we're more, in some sense, the Tesla, just insofar as we had this debate kind of internally recently, which is I don't consider Tesla to be a car company. I consider them to be a technology company who happens to have made cars, whereas Ford is a car company who's investing heavily in self-driving and automation and all these things, right? And so I think there's like that's one thing that I think is more difficult for people to appreciate is the fundamental culture, DNA of a company does matter a lot. And when you're viewing, like in our case, humans as the API of our platform, as opposed to technology-enabled services, which there's plenty of those kinds of companies, which I think they obviously are doing the best they can. But ultimately, when your DNA is a services company and you're still ingrained in some of these ways of thinking of time equals value, it's very, very hard to kind of walk that back. And so that's sort of the analogy that I think about. But I think the safety part's also very, very accurate.
So Omar and then Allison, what keeps you up at night? So as everybody tries to learn from, like let's say you're at the top of the pyramid, and so much of the community is learning from you. You're first to the boats, you're early adopters, et cetera, et cetera. What's keeping you up at night? What's the question that you're asking yourselves?
You want to go
Omar,
first,
start.
Allison, or you want me to take it?
I mean, for me, I am thinking a lot because I am a bit of a cheerleader for AI and I personally love it. And I see so much promise that I want to make sure I'm appropriately reflective and mindful of stewardship on the broadest possible sort of landscape. Thinking about, well, am I mitigating the downsides? Am I identifying them? Am I provoking enough conversation on that? Are we being really thoughtful and in terms of how this gets deployed to our clients? Because that again is a sacred trust. They're relying on us to help navigate it. Are we bringing that really balanced picture of risk and opportunity forward? So that's what I'm spending a lot of time on, to make sure I'm really thinking deeply and not just doing cartwheels.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's I really do believe we're already seeing it that there is going to be significant. I mean, as all these tasks get automated, and as some of these jobs consist of mostly doing these tasks, I think these jobs are also going to get eliminated. However, for every 100 jobs that are going away, I do personally believe there's going to be 100 or more that are created. I think the part that keeps me up at night is I feel a sense of responsibility to ideally make sure those 100 people that are losing their jobs are in a position to at least be eligible for the next 100 that are being created. And it may not be overnight that transition happens. So how do we deal with kind of this massive change that's about to come? I think it's something that I think a lot about.
I had an aha moment to address that just last week. We had Solid Atlanta. Mark Jenkins from Constellation, which is a big energy company. They run 3 Mile Island, and they've got $17 billion and $20 billion in energy contracts with Microsoft and others. And here's what he said to us regarding that. For every $1 billion in construction, there's X number of dollars in legal fees that get generated. For example, you've got real estate contracts, you've got sales contracts, you've got IP contracts, you've got tax implications for the land. There's so much legal work that's being generated by these billions of dollars of data center infrastructure, AI investment, that if you're just staring at the labor and employment hours that are going away, you're missing the story. It's a global exponential growth factor. Show me $1 billion of infrastructure, and I'll show you, X. We don't have the X, by the way, but this is a great project for those of you that are listening that have, some student in law school and/or getting an MBA. Go do this. Show me the $1 billion of investment equals X number of legal hours, and you will be one of the most popular people in the world when you write that paper.
David, I'm sorry, I have to run, but this is great. Thank you so much. And
Omar, thanks. Omar, thanks for joining us. Alison, I know that it was a little bit of an abrupt ending here. I'll come up with a fabulous song.
I know you will. Editor extraordinaire. Brilliant.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, be sure to give us a like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your shows. And if you want to take your career from now to next, never eat alone.